This case study's with Urban Meyer. The first thing I wanted to do when I got with Urban was show him a speech that Jim Carrey gave at the Golden Globes to get his thoughts on it. And here's that speech.
Thank you. I am two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey. You know, when I go to sleep at night, I'm not just a guy going to sleep. I'm two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey going to get some well-needed shut-eye. And when I dream, I don't just dream any old dream. No, sir. I dream about being three-time Golden Globe winning actor Jim Carrey. Because then I would be enough. It would finally be true. And I could stop this terrible search for what I know ultimately won't fulfill me. But these are important, these awards. I don't want you to think that just because if you blew up our solar system alone, you wouldn't be able to find us or any of human history with the naked eye. But from our perspective, this is huge.
Here's Urban's thoughts.
When you showed it to him, I was like, why am I watching this? You know, I'm not sure what this has to do. And then as we talked afterwards, it does bring a little bit of understanding why you would show that about, you know, the two-time Golden Globe winner. And it really is important when deep down, how important is it really, you know, in the big picture of things.
Now that's the conflict of high performance. What's important versus what's really important. And so to get an idea on how Urban was socialized, one of the questions I asked him was, when was your father most proud of you? Here's what he said.
He has the same beliefs that I have, that family is so important. He's such a great father and was always there, never missed a game, you know, but, you know, I think either athletic achievement or coaching achievement.
So Urban's socialization revolved around two things. One, family values. Two, the reinforcement of achievement, which is ultimately what created tension in his life. He grew up, and this was the mantra he was raised in. You could be smarter than me, but you'll never outwork me.
I grew up in the Woody Hayes mantra. I grew up here. I grew up 2 hours from here. And I was kind of raised that way. You can be a little smarter, be a little faster, jump a little higher, but there's no chance you're going to outwork us. And that's the mentality, is the hardest working person or team will win.
And so when you take that mentality with clinical levels of focus, predictable events occur. He directed that focus at this. This is what that sounds like.
Everything was focused towards winning that championship. And my career was focused towards that. My livelihood, my getting up in the morning, when I'm playing golf, when I'm with my family, I'm thinking about how do we get to that championship.
And so how do you know that you're obsessed? When the things that are really important to you start to fade into the background. And that's exactly what happened to Urban. He became consumed. And so there's life events that wake you up. One of the life events that woke him up was when Nikki signed her national letter of intent. This is what happened.
When she signed a scholarship, and I was there in the audience as she got up to speak, and she said, Mom, you're always there, and Dad, I love you, you're great, but you know, you weren't always there. And that's when it hit home that I became that guy that I used to not want to be. Have a couple trophies on the wall, but missed a lot of what's really important.
And if he was going to write a book about that time frame, this is what it would be called.
I was going to write a book at one point. I said I was going to call it the 10-year sprint. And you become consumed with perfection, with, you know, the loss of a game was like you weren't going to see tomorrow.
He recalls a conversation that he had in a locker room with two of his mentors right after winning the championship.
And I'll never forget, I sat with my father and Earl Bruce, two of my mentors. And I remember sitting in the locker room after the first national championship. Now we're playing with house money now. I get to coach for fun. And this is going to be a walk in the park from this point forward, and obviously it's not true.
And this is the realization that he had the next day.
To get where we got, you know, you wanted to take a deep breath and take a couple months off and say, okay, the next day you're on the road recruiting and you're doing what you got to do.
And this is the realization he had when you look at the difference between building and sustaining.
The energy and thrill to climb the mountain is awesome. To maintain is nothing but fatigue.
And that fatigue wore on him. And eventually he got off the treadmill, and this is his resignation.
I'm stepping down as a head football coach at the University of Florida to focus on family and my other interests away from the sidelines. I would be glad to answer your questions for you at this time.
And so he began a new search. How can I pursue high performance and not lose what's really important to me? And that search led him to Bob Stoops. Here's the best thing he took from Bob.
There was a time in the coaching profession where having family around that was a sign of weakness. And no one would really say it, but it was like a medal of honor to say I slept in my office 5 nights a week, or I've worked so hard I missed this. And he was one of the first guys, successful coaches, that he made it very clear that family was not going to get in the way of his job. And I was amazed by that, shared the same philosophy, and I've just always, and on top of that, he's an excellent coach.
And so Urban started to think and organize how he could put his philosophy in action. And during that time frame, the Ohio State job comes open. He talks it over with the family, and the family makes him sign a contract.
This is a contract that my kids made me sign before I was allowed to sign a real contract.
And on that, there were some conditions. Almost a decade later, I asked him to reevaluate that contract. Here's what he said. And if you were reevaluating Nicky's contract, what do you think? Was that at the time?
It was awesome. It was awesome, and you know, so much of it was symbolic.
And that symbol hangs behind his desk. Here's what he sees when he looks at it now. As you see it, like, how do you internalize it now?
Well, it takes me back to a time and that I want to make sure never happens again.
And he has systems in place to make sure that happens. Here's how he started putting those systems together.
Whatever your priorities are, and only you can come up with your priorities. It can't be your family's priorities or your uncle's priorities. It's got to be or the fans' priorities. It's got to be yours. And then you have to have a way of bringing everything back when things start to get chaotic.
And the life of a coach is chaotic and oftentimes unpredictable. Here's how Urban brings it back.
My mechanisms are very clearly in my office. It's devoted to my family and faith. It's right behind my desk. That's the way I start my day. At 6 or 6:30, I'm part of a Bible study that a group of us are in. I have to get that. If I don't get that, I feel awful. And that's my beginning time. I have to work out at lunchtime and take care of myself, or if not, I feel awful. And then I got to get my family time. And I make sure, and so does my wife, make sure that those are certain times you can't touch.
Why do you think coaches think, I can't do that and still win at a high level?
Well, I've been there, because you feel like you're falling behind. You feel, and that says, my wife says, you tell me you can't take 30 minutes on a treadmill, someone's going to get you in 30 minutes, because that's the paranoia of being outworked.
So I just want to play Urban's resignation one more time and then pair it with something else to show you some irony.
I'm stepping down as a head football coach at the University of Florida to focus on family.
So when he steps down, who steps in? Will Muschamp. Here's his hiring press conference.
I want to thank my wonderful wife, Carol. Please stand, honey, and be recognized there. It's really difficult being a coach's wife, especially mine, okay? During the season, she's a widow. She's dealing without me a lot because I work awful lot. I'm very driven in what we do, and I want to do a good job for our football team and our football players and our program. And I think I've got an obligation to do that.
So think about that for a second. His wife's getting recognized, right, for what? Being a widow, right? So those are the societal cues that she's getting. Now, if you think about this, if you put the two columns next to one another, so society scorecard and what's important to you, ask yourself, what do fans care more about? What does the media care more about? How about this one? What does the administration care more about? And it's not wrong that they do, but what does that show you? You're going to have to fight to keep what's important if you're going to survive. And I think the only way you can do that is to detach from man's approval. That's where we went last. Do you think that you've detached from man's approval?
Detached from man's approval. To a degree, I have. Yeah, I think once again a very good question. I don't seek it as much as I used to. You know, I'm not consumed by it. I don't question. You know, I've had people that, you know, would write some just horrific things about, you know, but that's the choice I made. And finally I got to the point where, you know, just realize the source. You know, and that's their job, and everybody's got to sell papers or get hits on social media. But yeah, I'm, however you put it, detached from man's approval, is that how you said it? That's strong. And I believe at this point in my career, I'm fairly well detached.
And he's got reminders everywhere. This hangs from the team room, right next to that, and it's a constant reminder to keep what's important, what's really important.